This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. Mikey, how are you, my man?
Good, man. Up? This is a special episode.
Very special episode. We're off. Just got off our trip from MBWA, the 87th Annual Convention. We had a fun time. We were recording in the afternoon. Red Eye Bud is a little dicey. We will see how long I last today.
Yeah. There's something else special about today.
What else is special about today,
it's
Mikey?
Birthday.
It's your birthday. Happy birthday, Mikey.
Thanks,
yes.
Man. Yeah, 29
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you, Mikey. Happy birthday to you.
Oh, man.
Yay, Mikey.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, Sarah, it's Mikey's birthday. Happy birthday, Mikey. Nobody can hear her.
I feel special. Thanks, Sarah.
Oh, well, welcome back home. What time did you get home last night, bro?
I got home about 12:30, 12:30-ish. But yeah, I mean, losing 3 hours like that with the time zones, that's the hardest part.
You got home and I was heading to the airport.
Yeah. It's like a time warp though, too, right?
Total time warp. Yes. I sat down next to the guy and he was like, "This is my first red eye." I'm like, "You'll be fine. You'll learn to enjoy them." Because I actually enjoy them. You get back. Yes, it's an early morning, but you move through the night and the dark hours and you don't get a lot of sleep. But it's the alternative. Like, I wouldn't be back yet if I had even gotten up and taken the 6 a.m. flight.
Yeah, we woke up, we went to breakfast, we had a quick meeting, I went to the airport, and then when I got home, it's 10:30 at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So it's just the day, it ate up the whole day.
10:30 at night. Well, if you're on the YouTubes or on the, let's see if we can share a window here, or on the Spotify, here's our video. So we did a booth, like a big business. Look at that. Mikey had the booth. We had an education seminar, entitlements versus incentives. Mikey, you did incredible. We checked out the main room and all that stuff. And then I even got in a rickshaw, which are a complete nuisance.
And those things cruise. I didn't jump in one, but I was watching. They're not just creeping around. Those are electric rickshaws that are just cruising.
They are flying. Yes. And the Uber drivers are like, they are a nuisance, an incredible nuisance.
I can see that. Yeah. They were all over too. Music blasting.
I mean, it's on brand for Willie and I to get in one of those things, right? It was
totally. I'm a little disappointed I didn't join you guys.
We had just ordered the Uber, and I was like, the rickshaw's right here. Let's just take one of those. Like, why not?
Let's good choice.
I attempted to negotiate with him. I was in no mood to negotiate really hard. He wasn't into negotiating with me either.
Oh, you tried to negotiate him down on his feet?
For sure. 100%.
That is totally Bud. That is right on
brand. Yes. He was like, I got him down, but he was like, $40 a person. It was like, screw you. No way. Like,
a person?
Yeah. And he's like, okay, 20. And that was as far as I could get.
Wow. That's still that's expensive. You guys only went 3 blocks.
A mile. It wasn't quite 3 blocks. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how long a block is though, but it's.
I almost walked there from the hotel, and it was a 13-minute walk, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, well, we took a rickshaw. That was really easy.
Love it.
Oh my God.
Love it.
Well, Mikey, you wanted to kind of talk through one of the things that was then the topic of the episodes on the main stage. One of our guys, partner in crimes, Robbie Maletis from Maletis Beverage out in Oregon, was on this panel, but it was with Jim Koch and with Robbie and
Lester Jones, right? Was he on there?
Lester was on. Lester was moderating, and who's the last person? Alex Bergson. If I'm
Yeah.
not completely butchering that, Alex, our apologies if we are. We're part of the media now, but we don't always get last names right, especially Bud from Manhattan Beverage. So I've seen Alex and Robbie do a panel before. They're incredible. This was a good panel as well. So lay the foundation. We talked about, Lester came out and talked about some of the trends, some of the tailwinds potentially in Lester's mind, economic tailwinds for the on premise. And then we had our friend of the pod, Jennifer Hawk, came on and talked about some draft line related data that she has seen for the on premise world. Might set up another podcast here with her on the back of this for sure. And reasons to believe and reasons to be excited. So, right, Mikey, draft
Yeah.
beer, ready to rock.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you can bring some positivity to the beer segment, especially when we're talking about on premise, and find some reasons to believe, right? We have to be hopeful and optimistic about that. And I feel like that's a lot of what they were saying. Very optimistic. Lester said that out of house spending is up 53 to 54%. On premise is just surging, right? As far as dollar sales. Now,
Yeah.
we're talking dollar sales and we're talking draft in particular, seeing the biggest increase there. And I always ask myself, I go back and forth on that because the very next article says, now dollar sales are up and we're seeing that, but keg shipments to wholesalers are down and only seeing about 3/4 of where they were before the pandemic. Not even dollar sales are getting back to where they were prior to 2020. But it also kind of makes you think too, all right, our dollar sales are soaring, our volume is still down. I mean, obviously pricing is up too, right? That's been a known
Newsflash.
yeah, exactly. And a huge headwind for beer in the on premise is just the pricing alone. I mean, I know as a family of four going out to dinner, and we like to, stop in and check out new places quite a bit. It over the last few years, it has just gotten crazy expensive. And I'm sure a lot of those numbers are coming from those price increases, but still some really good reasons to believe. And Jim said some really good stuff too, as far as looking at the on premise a little bit different way than we have been, right? And he also called out that beer distributors do tend to have a hard time giving them the attention and the focus on premise accounts. That is, just by the sheer lack of volume. They're not big accounts for us. Sometimes we're not servicing them as we should. And if we are, it might be costing us money because the volume just isn't quite there. But he had a whole new perspective on it as far as investments, right? When you're thinking about on-premise and our spends and looking at it as more of a sampling opportunity and getting outside if we're going to put a bunch of money towards, social media and any other kind of marketing type efforts, our on-premise outlets are some of our best marketing route to market, right? As far as getting liquid to lips, everybody loves to say, as far as just sampling and getting the brands out there, it's still where most brands are born to this day. It always kind of has been, and it's still very true. So using it that way and thinking of it a little bit different as far as, hey, I'm not going to get rich on my on-premise accounts, but maybe this is going to drive the off-premise. And there's a direct correlation there too.
For sure. I sit in that camp that and this is historical like data on my mind, but I like unpacking this from a historical standpoint. Like we at Atlas were spending so much money on premise when I started, and we were getting absolutely nothing for it. Like genuinely nothing for it from my perspective. So we fell in that camp of like trimming back all the investments as far as like on premise sampling, everything else, and started a right size and reasonable size. If anybody wants to make their on premise more profitable too, get a big ass casino in your market. That will make the on premise incredibly more profitable.
Yeah. Yes, we will. Not usually a good option or an option for most people, but
It will trim out like the bottom 10% of the riffraff of the operators. It'll consolidate and hoover up all of that volume to one central location that you ship beer to once a week. and you
And
take a big truck to that, they take it off a loading dock.
those consumers like to spend money because they're hopefully
Yes.
winning some money, and they go for the high end stuff, right? They're at a casino. They don't want to.
Yes.
They don't want to drink the low end. I mean, oh yeah, I'm here. I want to have this and that, and definitely more profitable.
So that's Bud's main advice.
Yeah,
Get a big ass casino in your market. We'll start there. And
but if
then
you can't do that,
if you can't do that, if you're not adult enough to figure that out, then you should try.
adult, I'm not sure it's directly correlated to being an adult. Maybe, yeah. You need to have the right friends. You
If
need to
you're
have.
not cool enough to do that, then you could try a series of these other things that we're going to come up with on the fly.
Yeah, but they did talk about, like you said, you mentioned events, and we got away from that because we weren't seeing the return on our investment. But I also think that, I think in our heyday we were doing way too many promos and events, and we were spending way too much money than what we needed to. And our team was getting older, and the last thing our team wanted to do was go to the bar every week and entertain people and all that stuff. But I do see his point, and I agree with him, with our on-premise friends and our on-premise accounts of being a little bit more creative with what we're doing and what we're offering, helping bring business to the table, right? And bring business to the table with events, whatever they may be. Suggest if they don't do happy hours, maybe help them get a happy hour going, something to just get some people, some foot traffic in there. And then it also turns into, our on-premise reps, I look at them they're consultants. They really are. And those people need to have a little bit of extra time to be consultants. I can't remember how many new bars and restaurants we had open in our market. And if you're the first vendor in there with the manager, they're asking, what should I have on tap? And don't say all of your stuff, right? Don't tell me all your stuff. You know the market, you know what's going on, you know what's selling in and outside of your company. Give me your recommendation. And that's huge when you get that kind of support and trust from a retailer, and you don't want to lose their trust too. The last thing you're going to do is say, well, your best bet is to kick out every single vendor except for me, keep me in here. Right? You want to get your foot in the door with trust, and recommending other products that sell it outside of your portfolio would get you that trust too. But also being smart about it, right? If you're going to suggest all of those things, make sure that what you're suggesting on the competitive side is going to also support your portfolio. Maybe bring in something. If the competitor has the best IPA out there, don't suggest yours. Suggest the competitors. Come in after it with your hazy, or come in after it with something that's a little bit different to ride on those coattails, and also obviously get your premium. But looking at it like that, more of the consultant side, and adding any kind of value that we have. And going back to what Jim said, as far as just, helping, being that consultant, having the extra time to be creative and help our on-premise folks in any way they can.
The parts that I'm vibing on is I've been talking to a lot more people, clients, and then just, distributor members in the industry around events. And we have gotten away from events post COVID in a big way. And having a footprint of events come back is going to lead to people being out and about in your market more often. So right sizing them or getting them out with, like, we had, little tiny Battle Creek had their little kegs and corks, which used to be a Bonto Oktoberfest. And what was the wine one? It was Bonto Oktoberfest or beer, but when they called it, it was
Corks for conservation.
Corks for conservation. Yeah. So this is a zoo in Battle Creek, the Binder Park Zoo. Shout out to the best board member from Battle Creek Binder Park Zoo would be my wife, Sarah, number one board member. But they hadn't had the event since COVID, and they put kegs and corks together. They combined them, took the whole zoo, and we rolled out there Saturday to go to the event at 4:00. Event started at 2, ended at 7. Couldn't find a parking spot. We had to illegally park, but board member Sarah approved it. So, we illegally parked. We were fine. We illegally parked just fine. The car was still there when we left. I know everybody's worried about that. But yeah, like people out and about, beverage alcohol, bringing people together. The events is a good idea for sure. And finding a way to get in the mix on the events strategically is probably something that makes a lot more sense than it did 10 years ago right now
Yeah.
in the state of the beverage alcohol world, for sure. And particularly beer too, just because beer's, moderation, less alcohol, bring people together and, have a pint or two and then still be able to safely drive home as long as you don't, hammer them out in half an hour.
Yeah. And that event is all sampling. It's
Yeah.
a bunch of different wine, beer, there's a lot of non-alc this year too out there, but just any vendor supplier that wants to bring out some samples, people pay to get in, they can have so many samples or whatnot, but it's pure marketing, right? It's marketing for your brand.
Yeah. The other piece they talked about too is like focus on profitability in draft accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So, we don't do a good enough job as an industry around getting serious about holding our customers accountable to meeting delivery minimums and some of the things that, in the real world, that is like very easy for other vendors to do. And I'm not 100% sure why that is all the time. Like our business grappled with that. I've seen us grapple with that around like being very, very kid glove with certain retailers around this. But like we need to get serious about delivery minimums. On premise is in that camp of getting serious about delivery minimums. No matter how many cases you take, there's a fixed cost to every delivery, something that we should probably drive into more in detail at a later episode.
Yeah,
But
I like what you said there too, as far as the minimum being on the dollar value, not so much the case value, because
no, case don't
that's gonna be
matter.
hard. It's gonna be hard for them to get to
Yeah,
the
the
case.
case doesn't matter. It's the there's a fixed dollar value that has a variable component to it and a fixed component to it. But you can basically come up with a blended number of roughly what it costs you to deliver on a somewhat of an aggregate, and that you should be putting yourself in a position to operationally make profits on as many deliveries as you can. So by raising those delivery minimums or even instituting a delivery minimum, you can strip out deliveries that are unprofitable, drive more profits to your bottom line, and reallocate that wage time, which is really just like drive time and driver delivery time are your constraints. How far away are your accounts and how much time are you going to spend there? Like those are your constraints. And if every delivery you get off the road is going to help you drive more profits. And we
Mm-hmm.
have to have a difficult conversation from time to time with some of our on-premise retailers around, hey, like I can come to you once a month, but if you're only ordering a keg and you're only ordering in a couple cases, like your foot traffic isn't enough and your velocity of product isn't enough, and I can't make money coming every other week for a keg and a half and a case of beer. Like it's
Right.
just we should be okay having a reality check around that. Everybody should be okay about that. And there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way to do it. But I understand you want me to come more often. I get it. You want the best level of service. The challenges that I have are that I can't provide you the best level of service for that amount of volume. And I can provide you the best service I can once a month is what I am able to do for you, or every 6 weeks or whatever it is. So I think we have to be serious about that. The other piece that I've been like picking on for a long time is the complexity of draft.
Yeah.
There, on balance, are too many accounts that have 15 to 20 tap handles or more. And there's this whole experiment. It's called the jam experiment. And you've heard me talk about it before, Mikey. But the premise of the jam experiment is two different displays, just like think Sam's Club or Costco, when you're walking around and you can sample stuff. And one day they're hosting a sample table, and they've got like 3 or 4 jams, and they're measuring two things: activity around the booth and around the sampling event, and choice to purchase, so buy rate. And day number 1, 2, the first or test A. Let's just A B this. Test A is 3 to 4 small number of choice and quantifying people around the display and booth and buy rate. Next day, they have 10, 15, 20. They have an incredible amount of choices, like 15 or 20. We post the link in here because I'm armchairing experting this, and I'm not going to read this on the fly. And they have a lot more choice. Differences between the two: no choice or lower choice, test A, don't have a lot of people around the booth. It's not super interesting. The buy rate, though, is pretty good. Second day, test B, a lot of people, a lot of buzz, a lot of activity, a lot of make everybody happy and excited. Basically, zero buy rate. So buy rate plummets. And the problem is that you have decision fatigue is what happens. And when given too much choice, you are more apt to make no choice. And there's a challenge in the beer industry at an account that has 20 or 30 taps and has an uneducated staff, which is many of them. They have an uneducated staff about what is available. And the jam experiment plays out in real life because the people who walk in there that are in the industry like us, that know how to pick through a beer list and know what styles they like or what styles they're in the mood for, and they can run through this and they cannot pick, we're the anomaly. We're not the normal consumer. And when we present a consumer with as much choice and we don't curate as an industry or as a retailer, the retailer doesn't curate what is out there on offering, it's the fuck it, I'll have a Bud Light.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'll have a Miller Lite. Like,
Exactly.
and you watch this and like anybody listen to this, next time you go to a bar, don't help your friend that has like 20 or 30 taps. Don't help your friends pick what they're going to buy or what they're going to drink, and just watch what they do. And almost always you'll see one or two people, if you're in a group of 5 or 6, who's like, I can't make a decision, just give me a Bud Light or give me a Miller Lite or a Coors Light or whatever. It's like, just take, which is great for like the big brands out there. But is that great for the category?
No.
I would much rather have if I was a retailer and I ruled the world on the retail side, I would choose to take on that complexity on my side. And I would say, hey, I'm going to have 7 to 10 taps. I'm going to curate the selections, and I'm going to have education available for my staff and have an expectation that they know what they're selling. And if you lower the choice and you educate the staff and you elevate the experience, you're going to get more people to choose that category over having this just gobbledygook of 30 or 40 choices, and people don't know what it is. The staff doesn't know what it is. None of the customers know what it is. And nobody's looking at it on their phone to figure out what the hell they're going to drink and research that. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It happened to me last week when we went out, local place here that, man, they're up over 20 taps. They have a strong connection to a distributor here in town. So a lot of crafts and usually some really good options. We like going to dinner, but our time was limited. We had time we were stopping in for a quick appetizer and one beer. And, you scan the QR code, you look on the phone and you go through the menu, and the waitress has already been there twice, and I'm still looking through my phone. Now she comes back for the second time to take her order. And what did I say? Fuck it, give me a Bud Light.
Yeah.
So I order my beer, then I continue looking through the list. By the time my beer got there, I'd already picked out 3 other beers that I'd much rather had at that point. I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting. This sounds interesting. But it was just overwhelming, over complex. And fuck it, give me a Bud Light.
And you know the business, you know the category, like you know what it is. And this is happening more often than we're giving it credit for. And in addition to complex draft, which has, to Jen's data, when draft is offering, velocity goes up. Like that makes sense, right? That's why we have draft beer as an offering, because it's going to drive velocity, it's going to drive sampling and all these things. But when we have, 25 or 30 taps, I don't think it does what we think it does. It just it doesn't.
And then where's our focus? If our rep, or if I'm the rep and I'm in the account and I have 10 plus taps, what am I focused on? What do I have 50 posters up, right? What am I really trying to drive? And Alex and Robbie talked about that at the convention when they were on stage. They used the New York City metro area as an example, saying that 12 to 14 lines per account was a pretty good number. But obviously that's New York, right? That's going to change, and
one of the biggest cities in the world.
No. The
It's
small
just a little small
and
northeast town.
again, yeah. But then they also went into it's not about the number of lines that you have; it's about using those lines efficiently. And I like that. I like that a lot. And I actually had a sidebar conversation prior to this general session with one of our clients talking about an on-premise manager, and basically driving that on-premise manager with incentives or objectives and kind of where to go with it, right? Talked about paying per tap. We're every new tap you get X amount of dollars, or by percentage of taps. But all that's doing is just pushing and pushing and pushing. And then when we went into talking about quality of those taps, right, the efficiencies, and how we're using those taps. And now let's talk about with what you have. Now let's just grow volume and profits on what you have. Use what you have instead of just going out and getting a whole bunch of BS taps everywhere that are most likely going to sit. A lot of them are, because they might not be the right brand for the right account, and you're a little bit overwhelmed because you're not focusing on the account. What does the account have? What does the account succeed with? What is the account missing? Right? What voids can I fill for the account? And when you lose focus like that, you're just kind of throwing shit at the wall and hoping that it works.
Yeah.
So to kind of take that step back and making sure that what you have in there is efficient, and you're building on other things that are working in or out of your portfolio, and you're capturing that, and you're driving sales with your POS or your events or whatever else you're doing. That's when the focus comes back into play.
It's called optimization. And
Optimization.
optimizing, and you're thinking through optimizing for both volume and profits, which is kind of what we're all about around here.
Yep.
So we want to see this work. We want to see the volumes grows, and it's part of the complexity too. Like, we're offering this level of complexity on draft that is just huge, and then every single day, more and more on-premise retailers are bringing in another beverage type or category that is in a can or a single serve package in some way, shape, or form. And that adds another level of complexity where you've got 20 or 30 taps, maybe even more, but you might have 50 things at some of these accounts that are in a can or a bottle. I mean, even B Dubs, which is pretty efficient retailer, or some of our largest on-premise retail, like national on-premise retailers, they're pretty efficient operators when it comes to foot traffic and getting product out the door. They still have a ton of items that are in single serve package beer or RTD or twisted tea kind of flavor malt beverage world. So, that is out there, and you're negotiating around that as well. So it comes back to me, the jam experiment makes so much sense because it's about curating a choice. You curate the choice, you make it more attractive. That's going to drive more velocity and profit for the retailer, instead of giving the complexity to the consumer that doesn't know how to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
The industry are the pros. The retailers are the pros. They should be the one handling the complexity for the consumer. We're the novices. We don't know what we want to drink. Tell me. And how many times? Yeah. How many times do you go to, like, this same thing plays out at restaurants too, right? The places that have a Bible for the restaurants is Gordon Ramsay 101. The places that have the Bible, it's all frozen food. Nobody knows what anything tastes like because there's 100 different things on the menu, and nobody knows it. No, they all know that it's not fresh. But when there's 6 or 8 things on the menu and you ask the server what's good, they have an opinion because they've had it. And that works great. We should probably start thinking about our beer and our draft beer the exact same way, right?
Yeah. Focus on where it matters and where it's going to move the needle, and what's important, right? It's focusing on those accounts that we can actually move the needle with. When suppliers would come in and want to go on a ride with me, I had this conversation in San Diego with a couple of people. They would come out and they go, all right, well, hey, we want to go to your top 10 bars today, or top 10 on-premise accounts. And I go, no, you don't. Well, yeah, we do. Okay, cool. Jump in the car. Let's go. Walk into the first one. They're like, this isn't your top 10. This is our number 1 account. Why?
Yep. American Legion.
They're open at 7:30 a.m. They close at 2 a.m. They have cheap beer, and it's just, they're always busy because people are just there drinking. Your craft brand does just not belong in here, right? Now let's go to another bar that has 4 handles, 5 handles, maybe even 6 at tops, right? Now that is our sweet spot. That's our honey hole. Now that's where I want to take a supplier and say, I want one of those knobs, because that's how we're going to make a difference. And we're going to drive our brands through there with limited choices. Some of the suppliers didn't agree with me. They wanted to go to the bars that had 25, 30 taps. You're going to get lost in the shuffle. We want to start to build a brand. We want to get people to drink it. We want to actually see some fluid flow through the lines. Let's target some of these smaller places where choices are limited. They're going to be forced over to our brand. They're going to like it. Then they're going to go to the place that has 20, 30 handles and ask for it.
Some of our best craft handles in craft's heyday, because we're on the backside of craft heydays right now, or at least in a little bit of a lull at a minimum. We're at those accounts that had like 4 or 5 handles, and they used to be all mainstream, Bud, Coors Light, Bud Light, Miller Light, and like,
PBR.
Keystone or PBR.
And then take them off because they all have a very loyal drinker that's going to get pissed.
I've never met the guy who drinks Keystone, but there's on draft, there's always a guy. So at every bar that it is, there's a guy. Oh, that's a blast from the past. That's like young buds. That's like young bud growing pains in the beer industry, wondering who the hell drinks Keystone. No, it wasn't Keystone. Which one was it? It wasn't Keystone. It was, what was a red ale? I'm thinking of a different brand. Killian's. That was the one I'm thinking of. It's like, who's drinking Killian's on draft? That's the one.
Myself too. I'm going to apologize ahead of time for our distributor friends that carry Killian's. But if it wasn't for Irish pubs cooking with that brand, I don't think it'd still be around.
It's probably true. That is probably true. So, the other piece about this too is all these open taps, and Jen talks about this too, where like, are we taking advantage of these open handles as a sales opportunity on a regular basis? And she's got some good stuff. That's something we should have her come talking. But, she's got it pegged at 10% of the business being just lines are open at any given time across the account-based universe. So, like, to me, that's a huge number. And yeah, we might have just blown it or waiting for a keg to come or whatnot. But at the same time, if we have that much slack in the network where we can be 10% out of stock basically on a regular basis, that tells me there's too much variety out there as well. Like, that's a data point around variety too. Because if you were 10% out of stock all the time at a grocery store, like, that would be a crisis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're basically saying that we're 10% out of stock on draft at a regular basis, and nobody bats an eye at it.
Yeah, it's crazy. That 10% too is off of, and at least in her database, right? 1.5 million taps. So a 10% number isn't a very small, insignificant number. We're talking a pretty large amount floating around. And I love what she does on her end too, as far as targeting those and being able to go in and make objectives and incentives. So you're right. We need to bring her back on, talk about that some more. But yeah, as a rep walking in, or even as a team leader or ASM and walking in and seeing an open handle, it's just like, what's going on here? Can I have that? Well, no, they're bringing me more, but they're out of stock right now. They won't be back for a week or two. Okay, well, let's explore some different possibilities here, or get rid of it. Right, go down to 6 handles.
Yeah. You can take some handles out for sure. Yep. So, well, I'm glad we kind of walked through this. It was a great panel discussion. Good work, Robbie, Alex, and Jim. I mean, not like Jim needs any cheerleading on, right? I mean, right. Boston Beer, legend. But Alex and Robbie and Lester, great work. Ms. Jen, we're going to have you back on for those of us out there in, recovery land from MBWA.
Yeah.
Like I am.
It's a short visit, but it takes a toll on your body.
Especially that time zone, man. The time zone change is tough. Very tough. Mm-hmm. So I don't know where it is now. Oh, it's back in Vegas next year. So it's one less time zone away, but it's still out in Vegas. And it's a day longer.
Is it? Oh, boy.
Yep.
And it's Vegas, so it's an automatic 2-day recovery right there, just being in Vegas. And then it's a day longer. That's 3 days recovery.
Yep.
We're getting old.
We are showing our age for sure. But I will be back on a red eye, I'm sure, from Vegas.
I don't doubt it. I don't
Same
doubt
time next year,
it. Yep.
doing it again. So
Yeah.
I'm a crazy person. Oh man. Well, Mikey, good episode for those tapped in sales listeners out in the podcast land. Thanks for listening, and cheers. We'll be back with you next week with
Yeah.
probably a more in-depth, more in detail podcast with some more of our new segments out there.
Yeah. And thanks to everybody who was out in San Diego,
Yeah,
took the time to come up and introduce themselves, say hey, and comment on the podcast and like it. We appreciate that. We always enjoy the feedback. So
great fuel, great gas. Got a lot of good feedback for sure. So thanks for liking, subscribing, sharing with your friends. We really appreciate that. You keep pushing our little opinions, words, thoughts out into the world, and we'll keep here screaming into the void little by little, right?
yeah.
Cheers, Mikey.
Cheers, bud.